first time I encountered this poem, Young Friend, I was a new doctor going to interview for residency programs, and I found this poem on the wall, and these are the words. It says, Young friend, be part of something old, be home here in the great world where rain wants to give you drink, where forest wants to be your house, where frog says your name and says your name, where wee birds carry your wishes far, and the sun reaches for your hand. Be home here, be healed, be well, be with us all, young friend. I loved the poem. I jotted it down on a scrap of paper and tucked it away in my things and brought it home with me. And I kept the poem for over 15 years, kind of as a symbol of not only the way the earth welcomes us, but the way I wanted to show up with my patients as a pediatrician and as a doctor. Recently, as one of the co-founders of the St. George Children's Choir, we decided to commission a piece. I just knew that this was the poem that would be such a beautiful piece. So that led me to do some detective work, trying to track down this poet, Kim Stafford, who I didn't know, and get permissions from him, and then find a composer. And luckily, I had some connections through my son with a talented young composer who had won recent composition competitions, Grace Brigham. So I was able to find her to compose the piece. So I'd like to talk to each of you, Kim and Grace, to hear your story about your involvement in this project of creating this piece for children's choir, Young Friend.
Years ago, I was invited with a group of artists to come to Dornbecker Hospital in Portland, and a donor who had lost a child said, "Here's $600,000. Make art part of the healing dimension of the hospital, not a decoration, but let's have art make the place more welcoming, more reassuring, consoling." And this group of artists, we had sculptors, painters, writers, all kinds of people. We had this amazing meeting where each person told about an experience with a child in a hospital. And we wept. It was such a deep calling to be able to bring our art to such a place of healing. And so the whole hospital enables a child to be surrounded by, to be accompanied by these other creatures. It's probably the most important poetry commission I've ever done. And I was asked to do something impossible. That was my first reaction. Could you compose a poem that would be on the wall of the pediatric intensive care waiting room? This is where a parent, a sibling would be waiting, terrified, hoping that the child would be safe. And first I thought, well, what can you say in such a setting? But a friend of mine told me what you would not say. She said, you won't say everything will be okay, because we don't know if that's true. And this is a time for telling the truth. So it came to me. I was walking in the forest. What you might say is to the young child, you're part of a very old story, and you are accompanied by the rain, by the forest, by the birds, by the sun. And so this poem came forth. And then we had it translated into 7 languages, so it would be able to connect to the many cultures in Portland. And my collaborator, Margot Voorhees Thompson, did the calligraphy. She learned to do calligraphy in Cambodian, Russian, French, Spanish, and put these different versions on the wall where you found them. Mary. And I love that my poem has changed a little bit when you wrote it down. There's some different words in there, and that just says to me it's a living thing. It's traveling, it's growing.
When I first start a piece, I always like to really kind of learn the poem fully and memorize it and recite it to myself and figure out what the poet's intention was and meaning was behind the poem. Because when you first read it, it's not necessarily obvious kind of what it's about and what the inspiration was. And then when you learn that it was written on the wall of a hospital and then it's sort of dedicated to children in the hospital, that kind of brings a whole other meaning to it. And so when I learned about that, I felt like I immediately connected to it just because I, as a kid, went through like the hospital stuff and, loss of loved ones and things like that. So I felt like I immediately connected to it. And at that point, when I connect to a poem so much, usually the melody kind of just comes to my head randomly. So that's what happened essentially. The first part that came to my mind was the ending where it says, "Be home here, be healed." That's sort of that line came to me right away. And so I wrote it down. And then the overall melody came to me next. And from there, it was kind of just filling in the missing pieces and putting in the piano part, which I wanted to support the vocal line first and foremost, and also sort of mimic what the words are saying, like where it says bird, make it sound like a bird. So that's kind of how the process was.
As we talked to the kids about what does this mean to you, because we tried to tell them the story of how this had come to be as well, and we asked them, what does it mean? What is this song about? And they raised their hand and they said, I think it's about the earth welcoming us. And one person raised her hand and said, and the young friend isn't necessarily young. It might be an old person who is still young compared to the earth itself. And we just talked about the importance of creating belonging. And as a pediatrician focused on behavioral health, this aspect of it has become even more important to me. The research shows us that one of the risk factors for depression and suicide is lacking a sense of belonging, lacking a sense of participation. And so that created another layer of meaning to me of, this poem really being a call to all of us to create belonging on this earth, that it's our charge to be able to help people feel welcome on this earth. So as a children's choir, it was also a really exciting process to involve the kids in putting this together. First, teaching them the piece and talking about the meaning of the piece, but then also having them participate in audio recording and then video recording. We were able to go to Scenic Overlook in Snow Canyon State Park in St. George, Utah, and to have this beautiful backdrop of the mountains behind us. And then also we decided to add a bit of a dance element, and so we had some local dancers choreograph a piece, and also have that come out of this too. And to me, it's just so exciting to think of how one creative exercise can inspire another. I particularly think of the poem by Longfellow. It's called The Arrow and the Song, and it says, I shot an arrow into the air. It fell to the earth, I knew not where, for so swiftly it flew the sight could not follow it in its flight. I breathed a song into the air. It fell to the earth, I knew not where, for who has sight so keen and strong that it can follow the flight of song? Long, long afterward, in an oak, I found the arrow still unbroke, and the song from beginning to end I found again in the heart of a friend. And just this idea that this poem by Kim Stafford was like this arrow that he shot out, into the universe, and it hit me, and I caught it and kept it, and then the Arrow intern then has made contact with Grace and with Rachel and with Troy and Erica, the dancers, and Lily, the young dancer, and all the kids in the choir, and hopefully all of you who listen to the piece. Do you have any other thoughts to share? Any final things that you might want to say to the children who are performing this piece for the first time? Because we would have loved to have each of you come and join us in the St. George Tabernacle for the world premiere, but you'll be joining us virtually in this setting on this recording. So is there anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, so going back to what you're saying about the sense of belonging aspect and how important that is, and how people honestly don't realize how important that is for kids, especially, I think. Kind of just a general message, and this relates to the piece, but also just in life, I guess. My thing that I would tell myself if I was tell my younger self is to just do whatever makes you happy, and like nothing that doesn't make you happy, and not think about what your classmates or your peers might think of that. So like I was always called like the weird, like the music obsessed nerd person, because I wasn't an athlete and I was just in music, but then look where that's gotten me, because I didn't stop doing music.
And Kim?
Yeah, I would go along with what Grace said, that when you're young, sometimes you feel you don't fit, you're different from other people. And I want to say, as I listened to the singing, I cried. It was so beautiful. And every voice in that choir has a different gift. And as you grow older, I think you'll find what makes you different is what makes you beautiful.
Thank you so much for being part of this creative process and this exciting moment of bringing a new piece into fruition in this world, the world premiere of Young Friend, with text by Kim Stafford and music by Grace Brigham.